I'm going to tell you what you need to be doing in the winter to make your lawn look great this spring, and I'm also going to talk to you about your lawn and help you understand if it's dormant, if it's dead, or if it's just damaged. Let's get started right now. Today's video is sponsored by my friends at Yardbook. If you need a lawn care software, go to the one that I've been using since 2015. Go to yardbook.com. Well, here's my lawn. This is a dormant Bermuda lawn. I know for those of you with cool season grasses, this is probably just disgusting to look at. I get people from the Midwest regularly say, why is my yard dead? And I have to try to explain to them the difference in dead versus dormant. But I will say this year we got down in the Birmingham, Alabama market where I live, we got down to about 8 degrees and it stayed below freezing for 48 hours, I believe, which was not good for our shrubs and our grass. And I want to show you some examples of that, and I want to talk to you about how to determine if your lawn is okay, or maybe if it's damaged, or in some situations where it literally might be dead, and what we need to do about it in those situations. Now, before I do that, I want to show you this yard and just talk to you about why it looks the way it does and what I'm doing to my lawns right now, to my own individual lawn and to my customers' lawns for my weed control and fertilization business. That is by far my friendliest chicken. He follows me around. She, I should say. So the reason when I walk across this lawn you're going to see virtually no weeds is because I use a fall pre and post emergent. So if you have a lot of weeds in your lawn in the wintertime on your warm season grasses, chances are those are cool season weeds and you did not put out a fall pre and post emergent, or you did not make a proper application. So we want to get that fall pre and post emergent application out before the weeds germinate. So in my market near Birmingham, Alabama, we're going to do that in September and October, get that watered in, and that's going to do a great deal just to eliminate those weeds and control them early in their life cycle, where you're basically never going to see them in the lawn. I'll mix a post-emergent in with that application. I usually just put 2,4-D in there, and that helps with like dandelions and things like that. Now, the pre-emergent I'm using is called Spectacle Flow. It's quite expensive, but also very great product, and has done wonders on particular weeds like Poa annua and things like that that can be a problem this time of year. That's the first tip. If your lawn's full of weeds next year, get your pre-emergent out before the weeds germinate, and that'll greatly help with those cool season weeds. But what am I doing right now? So for me, come January, I'll start spraying a pre and post emergent, and just like in the fall, I'm trying to get ahead of those cool season weeds. When I'm doing it now, I'm trying to get ahead of those warm season weeds, just things like crabgrass, annual weeds. So I'm spraying prodiamine, and I'm also mixing in Change Up and metsulfuron. And there's a video popping up on your screen now that you can go back and watch that'll show you the exact application I'm doing on these lawns, even how to mix it into your tank. So the prodiamine is going to do wonders on crabgrass and things like that, getting ahead of those weeds and help control those. And then when you mix in the Change Up and the metsulfuron, it's great even for things like wild garlic and onions. Just about any broadleaf weed that you're going to see in the lawn, it's going to knock those out. Whether it's some cool season weeds hanging around, or maybe you've gotten some warm weather and you're waited a little bit later on your application, and it's going to help knock out some of those warm season weeds as well that may be at a very small early stage in their life. I want to talk to you a little bit about the winter damage. I had a customer come out yesterday and he said, you know, we got down to such cold temperatures recently. He said, do you think that the grass is dead? And here was my answer to him. I said, to be honest with you, it's going to be hard to know for sure what kind of damage we're talking about for a couple more months. When we get into the spring and everything starts turning green, then it's going to be a lot easier to answer the question, is my lawn dead, or is it damaged, or is it just dormant? But it's not like there's no hope now, and I can show you a couple things to look for to help answer those questions. I live in zone 7 as far as the planting zone, and you can see this tree here. I looked it up. This is a Deodara cedar, I believe is what it's called. But anyway, you look it up, it's rated for zone 7 to 9, and so we're kind of on the northernmost part where this tree would make it, and you can see where the needles are turning brown, and so it took a little bit of winter damage as well. But I've seen some shrubs that I didn't think really would have a problem dealing with the cooler weathers that have really gotten zapped from the cooler temperature. So let me go here and show you. I'm really sad to see this on my own property here. I hope these shrubs are going to survive. But these are encore azaleas, and it's not just my encore azaleas, but I have seen a lot of encore azaleas that are looking like this. Now, I hope it's not dead. And what I read from a nursery, they said basically we need to just wait till spring, see if it starts putting out new growth, And then if you do have some dead branches, cut the dead branches off to hopefully encourage new growth on these plants. And you may even not get the blooms if you start whacking on it. You know, you may cut off some of your blooms for this year, but we're trying to get the plant healthier again. I've also seen lower petalums, which are very hardy plant that are suffering for some winter damage. Now I'm going to show you some different grass types. This is zoysia grass, and what I want to do when I'm looking at the grass, and this may you may give it a little bit more time depending on when you're watching this video. If it's still, you know, below freezing, it's going to be a little tougher to do. As we start getting some warmer weather, what I want to do is I want to start digging through the grass here and getting down lower and seeing, is there any green tissue? And what I can find is even just a little bit of green tissue. Let me see if I can make it show up on the camera here. As I dig down right there, you can see that is actually green. I'm hoping that's showing up. But when you get down low here and you start seeing green leaves popping up, and I see another one in here, then that lets me know this zoysia right here may look dead, but it is absolutely not dead. And another way to do this, if you get on the edge of a sidewalk, let's pretend, I know this is not a sidewalk, but let's say this was a sidewalk. And oftentimes on the edge of the sidewalk where the grass is growing, you can see a lot of green. Now, sometimes the reason it's green on the edge of the sidewalk is because that heat is radiating off the sidewalk and it starts to warm your soil and it starts to make the grass turn green in those areas. But that should give you some hope that if it's green there, you know what, it probably is not dead over my whole lawn. I've just got cold and it's just dormant, which is what it's supposed to be this time of year. Now, your Bermuda grass is one that typically is going to go fully dormant, at least in our area. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think in some ways that can help protect it from really cold temperatures. The other great thing about this, and this is a tip that I do all the time, is on a dormant Bermuda lawn, when it's sure enough dormant, if you've got a bunch of grassy weeds, let's say it's full of poa or it's full of Dallas grass or just tough weeds, you can actually go in there and you can spray the whole yard with glyphosate, which is the active ingredient found in Roundup. So you want to follow the label, wear your PPE, and I use 32 ounces per acre, or you can just go in there and spot treat those individual grassy weeds with that. But you got to be a little careful you start spot treating large areas of POA and stuff like that, because what you can do when you're applying glyphosate is you can delay the green up in that particular area. What it means by that is that sometimes later, when the whole yard starts turning green, you're gonna have that big spot where you spot treated with glyphosate, and it's gonna delay the green up on that, and so it's still gonna be brown. It's gonna look kind of weird for a few weeks. But believe it or not, I used to do that regularly on this yard. This is my own personal property here, and I used to spray the whole yard with 32 ounces of glyphosate and trying to get rid of some of these grassy weeds. I know many that follow the channel know that this yard was plugged, and I basically renovated the whole yard by just plugging it with sod. So I had to get rid of a lot of horrible weeds out of here, and that was one way I did it. Now, the disappointing thing about that is glyphosate is 3 times the price as it was probably a couple years ago. So it used to be a cheap way to clean up a nasty yard. Now it's just a good way to clean up a nasty yard, but not necessarily cheap anymore. Let me walk over here and show you some St. Augustine grass, and this is an area that didn't get quite as much sunlight, and I kind of threw out a little bit of St. Augustine. It's not exactly filled in great yet, but I want to show you at least what I'm looking for on the St. Augustine lawn. Again, we got down to 8 degrees and we were below freezing for 48 hours, and I was concerned about this St. Augustine. But as I get here and we had a little bit of a warm week, guess what I'm starting to see? Look at there, green St. Augustine grass. Green St. Augustine. Now, it doesn't look great. I mean, we're not going to win any awards with this. It looks like it just went straight survival mode, but I think it survived. Now, is it damaged? Potentially. Is it going to come out great this spring? I don't know. Maybe not. It wasn't too great anyway. And that's another tip in general. The healthier grass goes into winter, the better chance it has of surviving and maybe even thriving in winter and coming out looking better in the springtime. But what I want to make an important point here, and I think this is a mistake a lot of people make, is what you can do with your grass is like this. So I do this particularly with my centipede and St. Augustine lawns, but I think you can apply the same principle to whatever grass type you have, including the Bermuda and zoysia lawns. So what I'm doing is, while the grass is still dormant, yes, I'm getting out there, I'm doing blanket applications on these yards. I'm spraying the prodiamine, I'm spraying the metsulfuron, I'm spraying change up, and I'm trying to do a good job of weed control and get that good app down while they're still dormant. But let's say that a couple months goes by and we start getting into spring transition. Things start warming up, the grass starts turning green, and you don't know. I mean, I can tell, look at it right now, it's not dead. I mean, I know this is not dead. Now, is it damaged? I don't know completely if it's damaged. I'm feeling optimistic just by seeing the green tissue. But what I don't want to do, even on a normal winter, much less a cold winter, and it starts in that spring transition, start turning green, what I don't want to do is I want to see 3 dandelions out there and just go hammer it with another blanket application of herbicide. Because remember, grass is herbicide tolerant, or at least you know, if it's labeled for that particular grass type, but that doesn't necessarily mean it just loves herbicide. So when I spray with that herbicide, especially during these transition periods, and especially after it might have had a rough winter, then you're not helping that grass. So when I get to March, we want to start putting out the nutrients to start helping this grass recover. So a lot of you probably know I buy my products from Harold's, and I have this 2-2-16 granular blend that I put down on my Centipede and St. Augustine lawns. And that does a couple things. One, it's giving it some nutrients and starting to put nutrients back into the soil that has been depleted over the winter. But also, as my friend James tells me, that's been on the channel before, James says it's kind of addition by subtraction in the sense of what you're not doing to the lawn, and that meaning that you're not going in there and just hammering it with more herbicides in a time where the grass is not exactly in a position to handle that. So yes, you're putting the nutrients in there and you're not blasting it with more herbicides. So get that pre-emergent down early while it's still dormant, and when it starts transitioning, especially if it looks like it's damaged, let's kind of nurse it back to health. And I think one of the encouraging things in this situation is, you know, Bermuda grass especially, but these other turf grasses, they are extremely resilient. Doesn't mean they're bulletproof, doesn't mean they can't die, doesn't mean they have damage, but I'm telling you, these grass types, they are amazing at how much recovery you can see over the course of a summer. And just don't get discouraged if it's April and you're like, you know, it's damaged, it's not yet fully recovered yet. You know, it may take some really warm summer days and some water and some nutrition fertilizer before you really start to see that recovery. I mean, again, I have plugged about 3 acres of grass from not too many pounds of sod in my own yard, and just watching how that Bermuda grass spreads and spreads and spreads, and then taking care of my customers' lawns. Some of them water it regular, some of them don't water at all, some of them have insect damage, you know, army worms, whatever, and just seeing how the grass recovers is quite amazing. So if I could summarize that in a tip, I would encourage you, when it starts in spring transition, is it's okay to live with a few weeds for the sake of the turf health, and maybe just go in there and spot treat a little bit if you need to, but be okay living with a few weeds so that we can nurse the turf back to health. And once you get that nice thick healthy turf, then a herbicide application, it might not be as needed, but your grass would be able to tolerate it much better in that situation. One last quick tip here, and this is particular for my Bermuda lawns. What I like to do on my Bermuda lawn, I had somebody ask me yesterday, he said, hey, is my Bermuda lawn cut tall enough or too short or whatever? And I said, well, you know, all this dormant Bermuda is now going to turn green again. It's going to start putting out new growth from the roots. And so what I like to do, let's just say call this late winter, but as we get into February on into March, then I'm going to scalp my Bermuda down to about 1.5 inches, and that's just as low as my mower will go. And what that's going to do is going to let the sunlight get down there and start warming the soil. So if you want your lawn to be green this spring, one of the easiest things you can do, particularly with Bermuda lawns, is you can mow it early, and you'll see that the people that leave their yards really shaggy in the spring are going to have a delayed green up versus those that cut it short, because again, that sunlight gets down there, starts warming the soil, it's going to make that grass green up. That is a tip to get your lawn greener this spring, much more significant than fertilizer as far as the early green up goes, in my opinion. I hope the video has been helpful for you. Check out some of the other videos on the channel. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. I've been on YouTube since 2011, got over 1,000 videos at the time of this video. Also, if you want to get in a weed control and fertilization business, you might go to lawncarelife.com. There's a lot of resources there, including the Weed Control and Fertilization Academy. There's the pricing charts, there's the cheat sheets, there's all kinds of stuff. There's even resources for mosquito spraying, for mowing business, lots of stuff, lawncarelife.com, or hang around and watch some more videos. We'll see you in the next one.